Hi there. This little quilt, my Joy quilt, was made using raw edge fusible applique. And I recently had a lady who asked me how to do that. She was a real beginner. So this video shows you, if you're a real beginner, how easy it is to use raw edge fusible applique to make lots of different quilt blocks or whole quilts. What you do is you first of all, your pattern will have a picture of a flower or a bird. This pattern had a picture of flowers and birds. And you'll have to notice, or you will notice in most patterns or books that you use, the patterns are reversed. And the reason they're reversed is because the fusible goes on the back side of your fabric. So the patterns are reversed so that when you cut them out and stuck them on your background, that they will be going in the right direction. So here's my pattern for the Joy quilt. And I want to make this bird, and I am going to use, I think, this fabric to make this bird. So I have some fusible here. This is paperback fusible web. There are many types available. This is my favorite right now. It's called Steamosine 2 Light. I like light fusibles because then my needle doesn't get gummed up too much when I'm using them. But on the paper side of my light Steamosine, I am going to lay the paper right over my pattern, which is reversed, and I'm going to trace it. And I just trace right on the lines and have a little bird. Now this is the bird's body. I also will need to do a wing for the bird, so I'm going to trace a wing. And the wing has a cutout in the center. I'm not tracing all that neatly. And then I'm going to trace also a flower and maybe a musical note. And then we're going to cut them out. So let me trace, or let me get some more traced. Okay, I have these all traced, and I wanted you to notice very well when I trace them. See how there is a nice edge around the outside when I cut them out. I left about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch on the outside. You do not want to cut them, and I use my paper scissors for cutting. You do not want to cut on the drawn line. You want to cut outside the drawn line. Here's another one. And if I'm making a big circle, I sometimes will cut across one edge and actually cut the inside of the circle out, because the only part that we really need to have of the fusible is the part that's on the outside edge. So that's why we don't cut that right on the edge. We want that to be stuck really well to the fabric. So my bird's going to be, I guess, this color. And on the back of my fabric, I am going to pull the paper off of the fusible, pull the back fabric off. And now you'll see they're still sticky right here. That's going to go on the back of my fabric. So I'm going to lay it. Sometimes I lay it in a certain way, but for now, I'm just laying it down. And I press it well with my fingers. This is the bird's wing, I hope. And I think I'm going to make him out of this blue fabric. So I'm going to peel this paper off. And even though I've cut across that line, it's not going to hurt, because I can line it back up on my fabric. And then I can do the same thing with the flower and a leaf. But mainly these are stuck on there. And you really need to look at the type of fusible that you're using. but the directions are on each kind that you can purchase. So make sure you read your directions. Your directions will give you directions on how and when and what you do. What I have found with Steam 2 Light is that after I stick it on, I put a dry iron on it. So I'm going to take these, and this is my iron. It should be hot. I'm going to turn it to no steam, and I'm just going to touch it just lightly, just to make sure it's stuck to the back of the fabric. Okay, and then it's a good idea to let that cool a little bit. But now I am going to find my fabric scissors, and here are my favorites. These are Karen K. Buckley scissors. But now I'm going to cut right along the line that I have drawn. Remember, these are reversed, so, and when I'm cutting, it's often good to cut away extra. Remember what you learned in elementary school about cutting. We want to try to be careful as we can and stay right on the line. But here I have the bird's body and the fusibles on the back. And I'll go ahead and cut out the wing, pardon me. And the wing has a little cutout inside. When I'm cutting out, I cut away extra because too much there will be hard to deal with, especially if you're cutting. Now we don't want to cut across that wing. Instead, we want to clip out the inside and cut around, because this wing has a hole in it. Because the silly designer, who was myself, decided that it would be nice to have a hole in the flower and a hole in the bird's wing. Okay, so now I am going to kind of look at what I'm doing. It's going to be like that. I will take, when I'm using Fusible Appliqué, I often have a bigger background that I'm really going to need later. I will, if it's a 9-inch block, I will usually start with maybe a 10-inch block. For right now, this is a bigger scrap than I probably need. And I really don't have an idea of where the bird's going to go, but I will decide where he's going to go, and I will, first of all, peel off the paper and leave the sticky. The sticky fusible will still be on the bird, and I will stick him down on my background. And then his wing is supposed to be a little bit past his head, but sort of in line with the rest of his body. So I lay it down, and then I can peel this paper off in the same way. The sticky is still on there. You have to take it kind of slow sometimes. And the good thing about Steam 2 Light is that you can reposition it. If it's not right where you want it, if it's off a little bit, you can easily take it and add. I think I want it to be a little bit more like that. There. Now I will take this to the ironing board, and this time use my steam, and I will press it for 10 to 12 seconds with steam, and then it's ready to be sewn. I think on my website there is at least one, maybe two videos about sewing. I like to use the blanket stitch around all the raw edges. You can also use a small zigzag stitch. You might check and see there's one called stitching with the blanket stitch. So that shows more about how to set up your machine and how to do the blanket stitch around Fusible Appliqué. It's very easy. I often do put a stabilizer on the back, especially if you were working with something as flimsy as this one piece of fabric. So it's nice to have a little something to stabilize your stitches. But check that video for more on using raw edge Fusible Appliqué.